Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of Greek fire, the weapon that saved civilization. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. For 300 years, it was the most feared weapon in the Mediterranean world. A liquid fire that continued to burn on the surface of water. That could not be extinguished by smothering and burned more intensely when wet. That was projected in streams from ships and from walls, incinerating enemy fleets and armies with a fire that contemporary accounts described as blue or green, that made a sound like thunder, and that was accompanied by dense black smoke. It saved Constantinople from Arab siege in 678 AD. It saved it again in 718 AD. It dominated Byzantine naval warfare for 3 centuries. Then, sometime in the 13th century, it disappeared. The formula was lost so completely that historians and chemists have been attempting to reconstruct it for 800 years without definitive success. We know it worked. We know approximately what it did. We do not know what it was. Greek fire is the most successful chemical weapon in history and the most completely lost technology of the medieval world. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Out-of-place artifacts, objects found in geological or archaeological contexts that predate their supposed invention, represent one of the most contentious categories in all of science. The scientific establishment's response to such discoveries has historically fallen into 2 MPs. The first is skeptical investigation, careful re-examination of the dating, the context, and the object itself, which often reveals a mundane explanation. The second, rarer response is acknowledgement, a formal revision of the assumed timeline in light of evidence that cannot be explained away. Both responses have legitimate roles. The history of archaeology includes many cases where enthusiastic amateur discoveries of supposedly ancient anomalies turned out to be forgeries, misidentified natural formations, or artifacts simply displaced from their original layer by post-depositional disturbance. Critical scrutiny of extraordinary claims is not closed-mindedness. It is scientific responsibility, but it must be applied consistently. The same rigorous scrutiny applied to anomalous claims must also be applied to the mainstream assumptions those claims challenge. And sometimes, when the evidence is examined honestly, the mainstream assumption is the one that breaks. The significance of genuine out-of-place artifacts goes beyond the objects themselves. Each one represents a data point in a larger argument about ancient human capability, about what our ancestors understood, what they could engineer, and how much of that knowledge has been lost. The ancient world was not populated by primitive minds in primitive bodies. The brains that looked up at the night sky 40,000 years ago were neurologically identical to ours. Given sufficient time and motivation, they could have discovered and lost almost anything we know today. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding Greek fire, The weapon that saved civilization is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Greek fire was first deployed by the Byzantine Empire in 678 AD at the siege of Constantinople, where Arab fleets attacking the city were destroyed by a weapon that ignited on contact and could not be extinguished with water. The Arab historian Theophanes the Confessor credited the weapon with saving Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the weapon was reportedly invented by a Greek-speaking engineer named Callinicus of Heliopolis, who fled from Syria to Constantinople around 668 AD. The formula was one of the most closely guarded state secrets in Byzantine history. Byzantine texts state that the Emperor Constantine Porphyrogenitous instructed his heirs that the secret must never be revealed to any foreign power. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this. And that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Contemporary accounts of Greek fire describe it as burning on water, which no common combustible material does. This property eliminates simple petroleum-based explanations and suggests a formulation that either reacted exothermically with water or that was somehow prevented from being diluted. Some historical accounts describe it burning more intensely when water was applied. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, modern proposed reconstructions of Greek fire have included quicklime, which generates heat when wet and could ignite petroleum compounds, liquid naphtha or crude petroleum, sulfur-based compounds, and various combinations of organic materials. None has fully reproduced all of the described properties. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the secret of Greek fire was so effectively maintained, that no enemy power ever successfully reproduced it through reverse engineering, despite capturing Byzantine ships and prisoners. This degree of information security over 3 centuries is itself remarkable and suggests the formula was known to very few individuals. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: Greek fire was projected using a system of pressurized bronze tubes called siphonaria. The pumping mechanism and the pressurization technique are also unknown. Some Byzantine images show projection devices mounted on ships that appear to function as flamethrowers, but the engineering details are not described in surviving texts. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. Equally puzzling to investigators, the last recorded use of Greek fire in battle was at the Fourth Crusade in 1204 AD. After Constantinople was sacked by Crusader forces and the Byzantine state was disrupted, the continuity of the formula appears to have been broken. No definitive use of the substance is recorded after the reconstitution of the Byzantine Empire in 1261. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain Greek fire, the weapon that saved civilization. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Greek fire was primarily a liquid petroleum or naphtha-based incendiary combined with quicklime, which generates intense heat when wet, explaining the water intensification effect. The quicklime would react with water to produce sufficient heat to ignite the petroleum component, making the weapon more dangerous rather than less when enemy crews attempted to douse it. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that Greek fire contained an early form of thermite or a phosphorus-based compound that accounts for its extreme burning temperature and water resistance. Byzantine alchemists, drawing on the advanced chemical knowledge of the Islamic world and classical Hellenistic chemistry, may have developed compounds of sufficient sophistication to produce the described effects. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the secrecy surrounding Greek fire was deliberately maintained partly through information control and partly through the complexity of its production, a formula whose components required specific sources, specific preparation methods, and specific equipment to produce, making reverse engineering from captured samples practically impossible even with access to the material. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree, that is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding Greek fire, the weapon that saved civilization, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes contemporary Byzantine historical sources including Theophanes, Anna Komnena, and official imperial documents consistently describe the weapon's properties, water resistance, projection mechanism, color, and sound, across multiple independent texts, confirming the weapon was real and functional as described. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented Arab military chronicles from the 678 and 718 sieges of Constantinople provide independent non-Byzantine confirmation of the weapon's devastating effectiveness against fleets, with accounts of ships burning while crews attempted to swim to safety. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed Byzantine siege manuals surviving from the period of Greek fires used described deployment procedures for the siphon area in terms consistent with a pressurized liquid projection system, confirming the general engineering principles even without the chemical formula. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding Greek fire, the weapon that saved civilization. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Greek fire occupies a unique position in the history of technology, a weapon whose existence and effectiveness are thoroughly documented, but whose chemistry has defied complete reconstruction for 8 centuries. Modern incendiary technologies, napalm, white phosphorus, thermite, can reproduce individual described properties of Greek fire, but no modern formulation reproduces all of them simultaneously. Whether this reflects a genuine gap in our understanding or simply the exaggeration of medieval accounts is unknown. What is clear is that Byzantine chemists developed something that worked well enough to preserve an empire for 3 centuries, and that its loss remains one of history's most complete and consequential disappearances of technical knowledge. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of Greek fire, the weapon that saved civilization, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across competing theories and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Greek fire ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.